So we are reading the Celestine Prophecy by James Redfield. We are on the chapter Clearing the Past, page 154 of my book and page 83 of the PDF.
What would have happened in that case? You would have become stuck in a poor me drama. Do you see how this works? If you are a child and someone is draining your energy by threatening you with bodily harm, then being aloof doesn't work. You can't get them to give you energy by playing coy. They don't give a damn what's going on inside you. They're coming on too strong. So you're forced to become more passive and to try the poor me approach, appealing to the mercy of the person, guilt tripping them about the harm they are doing.
So what was happening over here? The 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 hero's parents were acting out the interrogator model. They were constantly questioning him and drawing power from him. Now, he tried the aloof attitude, but because they were coming on so hard at him, the aloof attitude did not work. So he naturally had to shift into the poor me attitude to be able to draw power from them back by creating pity or, to pity him or to make them start feeling guilty that they were putting too much pressure on him.
If this doesn't work, then as a child, you endure until you are big enough to explode against the violence and fight aggression with aggression. He paused. Like the child you told me about, the one in the Peruvian family that served you dinner.
So now, as the child is being pushed till the child does not have enough power, the child will get pushed. But then one day the child is going to burst out. So this happens to the best of us.
A person goes to whatever extreme necessary to get attention, energy in their family. And after that, this strategy becomes their dominant way of controlling to get energy from everyone, the drama they constantly repeat.
So now, in the beginning years of your life, whatever drama that you have to do to get energy, it gets ingrained in you. So it creates a pattern in you. Until you start becoming aware of the pattern to transcend it, the pattern will keep repeating in your life over and over and over again. So that's the reason why it becomes very, very necessary to actually look at the patterns that you have in your life.
I understand the intimidator, I said, but how does the interrogator develop? What would you do if you were a child and your family members were either not there or ignored you because they were preoccupied with their careers or something? I don't know. Playing aloof would not get their attention. They wouldn't notice. Wouldn't you have to resort to probing and prying and finally finding something wrong in these aloof people in order to force attention and energy? This is what an interrogator does.
So have you noticed the the point here is that Shimangla, your volume, I don't know.
क्या हुआ?
Nee, it's echoing, na. So the point here is that if the family members are very busy doing their own thing, then it becomes very difficult for a child to get attention from the family. What I have seen is that when we go in for a Vastu rectification in anyone's house, an energy field rectification, and I find if the heart chakra is affected, what it tells me is that everyone is in their own bill, everyone is doing their own thing, and there is no coordination and cooperation among the family members. They would even tend not to have their meals together. So now if a person needs to get attention, what does a person have to do? You have to start going and poking each person to get their attention. So this is what would happen, that this is how an interrogator starts to develop, because everyone is doing their own thing to get attention. To make people pay attention, you have to start poking them, otherwise they are not going to pay attention to you.
Is my voice not okay?
Your voice is okay, but when I speak there's a echoing coming, so either your speaker's level you have to turn down from the mute side.
Okay.
Yeah.
I began to get the insight. Aloof people create interrogators. That's right. And interrogators make people aloof. And intimidators create the poor me approach, or if this fails, another intimidator.
So now what happened? It's still echoing, Shubham.
It's not
Now
echoing here.
the interrogator, when a person is interrogated, if someone asks you too many questions, then what will happen? You will become aloof. You don't want to answer anymore. Or when that person comes to meet you, you will turn away and go away. This has happened to the best of us, right? If someone is probing too much into your affairs and you don't want to answer the question, you become aloof. So an interrogator will create an aloof attitude. An aloof attitude person will also create an intimidator. So these two go together. So interrogator. Now, an intimidator, because that person is becoming havi on the other person, will create a poor me attitude. And a poor me attitude will also create an intimidator. But if a person is becoming a poor me attitude, and it will be sustained to a certain extent, after that point in time, that poor me will also become an intimidator. So now if you look at schools, etc., the bullies, you will find that they have a very problematic childhood in their house, where they're always put down in their house. Now, when they come into school, they want to do the same thing to other children because they've gone into that particular cycle. So, if you look at the control drama of a bully, it would be the intimidator, poor me attitude, which will result in a bully in a school.
Exactly. That's how control dramas perpetuate themselves. But remember, there is a tendency to see these dramas in others, but to think that we ourselves are free from such devices. Each of us must transcend this illusion before we can go on. Almost all of us tend to be stuck, at least some of the time, in a drama, and we have to step back and look at ourselves long enough to discover what it is.
So, so
I
again,
was
it comes So again, it comes back to the point of self awareness, so that we become aware of what is happening with us. So it's again boiling down again back to awareness. So, what is happening with us? We need to start observing which of the four control dramas are predominantly active in our lives. What are the patterns which are constantly repeating in our lives? We need to transcend those patterns.
I was silent for a moment. Finally, I looked at Sanchez again and asked, once we see our drama, what happens next? Sanchez slowed the truck in order to look at me in the eyes. We are truly free to become more than the unconscious act we play. As I said before, we can find a higher meaning for our lives, a spiritual reason we were born to our particular families. We can begin to get clear about who we really are.
So now, Shivangla, mute yourself after you finish speaking. Okay, so now what does this imply? Okay, now when we are looking at it from the Gita perspective also, he's constantly saying, get a laksh, get an aim for yourself, align yourself to a higher goal. So the moment you start aligning yourself to a higher goal, that is the process by which you can transcend these patterns and these control dramas that we have in our life. And then a spiritual reason, we were born to the particular families. So now again in the Gita the same thing is being said, that whatever is happening in your life is for your highest spiritual growth, because it is coming in your life to make you grow spiritually. So the moment you learn the lesson that that particular event has come into your life for, you can transcend it and then move forward. Till you do not learn the lesson, it will keep repeating in your life. So that is why it becomes so important to start observing the patterns which are taking place in your life and keep repeating in your life.
I was silent for a moment. Finally, I looked at Sanchez again and asked, once we see our drama, what happens next? Sanchez slowed the truck in order to look at me in the eyes. We are truly free to become more than the unconscious act we play. As I said before, we can find a higher meaning for our lives, a spiritual reason we were born to our particular families. We can begin to get clear about who we really are. We are almost there, Sanchez said. The road was cresting between two peaks. As we passed the huge formation on our right, I saw a small house ahead. It backed up to another majestic pinnacle of rock. His truck isn't here, Sanchez said. We parked and walked to the house. Sanchez opened the door and walked inside while I waited. I took in several breaths. The air was cool and very thin. Overhead, Overhead, the sky was dark grey and thick with clouds. It looked as though it might rain. Sanchez walked back to the door. No one is inside. He must be at the ruins. How do we get there? He suddenly looked exhausted. They're up ahead about a half mile, he said, handing me the keys to the truck. Follow the road past the next ridge and you'll see them down below. Take the truck. I want to stay here and meditate.
So now So now what happens? Now Sanchez feels a low of energy and immediately he wants to put a strategy in place to meditate so that he can rebuild his energy again. Okay, so again, it's all a game of being aware as to what is happening with you. To manage yourself, you need to be aware that what is the strategy you can use to pull yourself back about again. So it's all a matter of resilience also. How do you hold your resilience? And of course, in awareness, we all have a toolbox, right? So we've got so many tools to apply to be able to build our resilience back for ourselves. Shivangla, you have to unmute.
Okay, I will, I said, walking around to get in the vehicle. I drove forward into a little valley and then up the next ridge, anticipating the view. The sight did not disappoint me. As I crested the ridge, I saw the full splendor of the ruins at Machu Picchu, a temple complex of massive, carefully shaped rocks weighing tons sitting atop each other on the mountain. Even in the dull, cloudy light, the beauty of the place was overwhelming. I stopped the truck and soaked up the energy for 10 or 15 minutes. Several groups of people were walking through the ruins. I saw a man wearing a priest's collar leave the remains of a building and walk towards a vehicle parked nearby. Because of the distance and because the man wore a leather jacket rather than a priest's robe, I couldn't be sure it was Father Carl. I started the truck and drove closer. As soon as he heard the sound, he looked up and smiled, apparently recognizing the vehicle as belonging to Sanchez. When he saw me inside, he looked interested and walked over. His build was short and squat. with dull brown hair and pudgy features, with deep blue eyes. He looked to be about 30. I'm with Father Sanchez, I said, stepping from the vehicle and introducing myself. He's up at your house. He offered his hand. I'm Father Carl. I glanced past him to the ruins. The cut stone was even more impressive when in close proximity. Is this the first time you've been here? He asked. Yes, it is, I replied. I've heard about this place for years, but I never anticipated this. It is one of the highest energy centers in the world, he said.
Okay, so so it's one of the highest energy centers in the world. As mentioned, this was mentioned also in the talk by Dr. Brian Daly and Alan Evans, where they said that there are chakric points in the earth also. Okay, like Mount Kailash is actually considered the crown chakra of the world. So, like that, Machu Picchu, and then there are minor chakras, there are modest chakras. So Machu Picchu is also one of those power centers where you can actually feel the power radiating. You have to unmute, Shivangla.
I looked closely at him. Clearly, he spoke about energy in the same sense it was used in the manuscript. I nodded affirmatively, then said, I'm at a point where I'm consciously trying to build energy and deal with my control drama. I felt somewhat pretentious at saying that, but comfortable enough to be honest. You don't seem too aloof, he said. I was startled. How did you know that was my drama? I asked. I've developed an instinct for it. That's why I'm here. You help people see their way of controlling? Yes, and their true self. His eyes shone with sincerity. He was totally direct, with no hint of embarrassment at revealing himself to a stranger.
Okay, one second. I'm muting you, Shivangla. Okay, so now what happens here? When you start building up your energy and you start becoming aware of what is happening with yourself and you transcend it, then you start understanding what is the game that the other person is also playing. So it allows your instincts, your intuitive abilities to start getting enhanced, which automatically allows you to sense what is happening with the other person. Okay. Shungla, you can unmute here.
I remained silent, so he said, You understand the first five insights? I've read most of them, I said, and I've talked with several people. As soon as I made the statement, I realized I was being too vague. I think I understand the first five, I added. It's number six that I'm not clear about.
Okay, so now again, what is happening over here? Now the hero, he is starting to pay attention to what he's saying and what he's doing and the way that he is behaving. So now he's catching himself. His control drama is aloof. So he doesn't want to open up to anyone. He wants them to give him energy, right? So now he's checking himself and opening himself up. Now, the Father Carl is right up there. So he is not playing a control drama. So he can be himself in any given situation. But now the awareness is creeping into the hero.
He nodded, then said, Most of the people I talk with haven't even heard of the manuscript. They come up here and are entranced by the energy. That alone makes them rethink their lives.
Okay, so now when we are going into a high energy field, when we are going into a a place or a person which has a high vibratory frequency, it automatically starts to reset stuff in our system. So that is why today, why do we visit a temple? Because it helps in harmonizing our energy field. Why do we want to go and meet spiritual people? Because it's just being in their presence harmonizes our field. Okay, so be going to these power centers definitely has a very powerful beneficial effect on us.
How do you meet these people? He looked at me with a knowing expression. They seem to find me.
Okay, so now this is another thing. When the person is ready, automatically it will start coming into your life the moment you open yourself. Okay, so stuff will start happening, which was the case of the first insight, where people are restless and then they start. The trick over there is to start noticing the spontaneity which starts taking place in your life. And the more you start saying yes, the more you start allowing the universe to play its game, the more spontaneous events will start happening in your life. Again, we come back to the first S, swata. It needs to come by itself into your life without effort, effortless. So when we start going into those states, automatically effortlessness starts creeping into your life. And that is exactly what yesterday Raj was also saying, that he does what he wants to do and he does it effortlessly. He does it because he wants to do it, not because he has to do it. So now, if he wants to do something, if you want to do something, automatically the effort is not so much. But if you don't want to do something and you have to do it, it becomes effortful.
You said you helped them find their true self. How? He took a long breath, then said, there's only one way. Each of us has to go back to our family experience, that childhood time and place, and review what happened. Once we become conscious of our control drama, then we can focus on the higher truth of our family, the silver lining, so to speak, that lies beyond the energy conflict. Once we find this truth, it can energize our lives. For this truth tells us who we are, the path we are on, what we are doing.
So again, what do we need to do? We have to go back to the origin of the problem, and the control drama originates from the family circuit in the first few years of our life. So what was the control drama that was inculcated into us by the family drama that was taking place in our life?
That's what Sanchez has told me, I said. I want to know more about how to find this truth. He zipped up his coat against the late afternoon chill. I hope we can talk more about it later, he said. Right now, I would like to greet Father Sanchez. I looked out at the ruins and he added, feel free to look around as long as you would like. I'll see you back at my house later.
I am told now they don't allow people into the ruins. You have to see it from outside only. That's what I understand in Machu Picchu.
For the next hour and a half, I walked through the ancient site. At certain spots, I would linger, feeling more buoyant than the others. I wondered with fascination about the civilization that had built these temples. How did they move these stones up here and place them atop one another in this fashion? It seemed impossible.
So
As my
So many of these sacred sites, even like the Egyptian pyramids, etc., it's like humanity. I mean, the enormity of the task of putting these rocks on each other becomes very difficult to fathom how they did it. The same thing is there in Elephanta. It's one rock, and they've actually carved the temple from the top down. So some of these engineering feats which are there from the ancient times are, I mean, we are at a loss as to how they would have actually achieved to do this.
So how would he know that he is more buoyant than the others who are present there?
Who?
The hero.
He
He
was
says
living.
here, I'm more buoyant than the others. I'm lingering, but I felt more buoyant than the others.
Where does he say
How
that?
can in the same para?
In this one only.
Yeah,
1 second.
I'll just read it out to you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I would, at certain spots, I would linger,
Yeah,
feeling more buoyant than at others. He's not talking
than
about other
at
people.
others.
He's
Okay,
not
okay.
talking about other people.
Yeah,
He's talking about the specific spaces where he would feel more energetic and less down. Now, I'll
yeah,
tell
yeah.
you, we had gone for a wedding to this castle. Where did we go? In Jaisalmer, right, Shimangla? Where was that wedding?
Jaisalmer, Jaisalmer.
Jaisalmer. Now I'll tell you, I
No,
was
no, no,
walking
not
around
Jaisalmer. Jodhpur.
Jodhpur, yeah, in Jodhpur, and I was actually walking around. I took the antenna with me, and there were certain spots in that castle where I used to start getting very heady. And when I checked the energy field, it was totally depleted in those spots. Now, in
Okay.
these castles, a lot of killing and war and all that used to happen. So, those spots become energized as depleting centers. Here, what we are talking about is energizing centers. You can have depleting centers also. Death zones can also get created where anyone going into that zone will have a problem. Like when planes crash or big accidents take place, death zones sometimes get created. You will find in many roads, they will have a sign that this is an accident prone zone. So that has become like a low energy center when more accidents take place. So this is here he's saying that at some spots I felt more buoyant.
Yeah, yeah. I actually read it as than the others, so I
Yeah,
was wondering.
So,
Yeah, but
Bhaiya, I have a question here.
yeah.
So, when we go to these temples like ये जो famous है like वैष्णो देवी हुआ या सालासर जी हुआ, so
Hmm.
are we going there because they have high energy, माने high energy spots हैं, or we are going for our chitta shuddhi, or we are going that God
Are
will
you
give us
joining the
brownie points?
Vastu workshop?
Not yet.
Yeah, so then we talk about all this stuff in detail in the Vastu workshop.
Okay.
Okay. So the point is that when we are in the olden times, you were supposed to visit the temple in the morning and in the evening because they structured your energy field. There's an access system in the body. We talk more about it in the energy field and Vastu workshop. You'll start understanding when we check with the antenna, what are the access systems and all that. And then you can actually figure it out. Why we were told to go into these centers, these energy centers. It was actually to again recharge ourselves. Like you recharge your telephone every day, right? That is the temples, etc., were made for us to recharge our energy field. It is basically that. Shalini, does that
Okay.
answer your question
Yeah.
partially?
Yes, Bhaiya. Thank you.
But the mechanics and technicalities we discuss in the Vastu workshop.
Okay.
As my intense interest in the ruins began to wane, my thoughts turned to my personal situation. Although my circumstances had not changed, I felt less fearful now. Sanchez's confidence had reassured me. I had been stupid to doubt him, and I already liked Father Karl.
So now again, what happened here? Nagarji always uses this example. Like today, you are having someone has fallen sick suddenly. Okay, now you're very nervous, you're anxious, and this thing. Now, as soon as you reach the hospital and you hand over the patient to the competent doctor, now you relax. So, in the same way over here, he was doubting all these people. He was constantly doubting them. Okay, so whenever you are in doubt, you get onto the left side of the grid and you start getting depleted. So now, as soon as he started moving from doubt to trust, automatically he starts feeling rejuvenated. He starts feeling the energy. Now, you've handed over the patient to the doctor, but the problem has not got sorted out. But in spite of that, you start feeling better. So, over here again, he's saying, although my circumstances had not changed, I felt less fearful now because he's moved to the right side of the grid from the left side. Shimangla, you have to unmute.
As darkness descended, I walked back to the truck and returned to Father Carl's house. As I drove up, I could see the two men standing close to each other inside. When I entered, I heard laughter. Both were busy in the kitchen preparing dinner. Father Carl greeted me and escorted me to a chair. I sat down lazily in front of a large fire in the fireplace and looked around. The room was large and paneled with white boards which were lightly stained. I could see two other rooms, bedrooms apparently, linked by a narrow hallway. The house was lit with low wattage bulbs, and I thought I could detect the faint hum of a generator. When the preparations were completed, I was summoned to a rough plank table. Sanchez offered a brief prayer, and then we ate, the two men continuing to talk. Afterwards, we sat together by the fire. Father Carl has spoken with Will, Sanchez said. When? I asked, immediately excited. Will came through here several days ago, Father Carl said. I had met him a year ago and he came by to bring me some information. He said he thought he knew who was behind the governmental action against the manuscript. Who? I asked. Cardinal Sebastian, Sanchez interjected. What is he doing? I asked. Apparently, Sanchez said, he is using his influence with the government to increase the military pressure against the manuscript. He has always preferred to work quietly through the government rather than force a division within the church. Now he is intensifying his efforts. Unfortunately, it may be working. What do you mean? I asked. Except for the few priests of the Northern Council and a few others like Julia and Will, no one else seems to have copies any longer. What about the scientists at the Vicient? I asked. Both men were silent for a moment. Then Father Carl said, Will told me the government has closed it down. All the scientists were arrested and their research data was confiscated. Will the scientific community stand for that? I asked. What choice do they have? Sanchez said. Besides, that research wasn't accepted by most scientists anyway. The government is apparently selling the idea that these people were breaking the law. I can't believe the government could get away with doing that. Apparently they have, Father Carl said. I made some calls to check and I received the same story. Though they're keeping it very quiet, the government is intensifying its crackdown. What do you think will happen? I asked them both. Father Carl shrugged his shoulders and Father Sanchez said, I don't know. It may depend on what Will finds. Why? I asked. He appears to be close to finding the missing part of the manuscript, the ninth insight. Perhaps when he does, there will be enough interest to create worldwide intervention here. Where did he say he was going? I asked Father Carl. He didn't know exactly, but he said his intuitions were leading him further north, near Guatemala. His intuitions were leading him? Yes. You'll understand that after you get clear about who you are and go on to the seventh insight.
So again, so what is happening here? You are guided by your intuitive ability. You are guided by uh, again intuitions. Okay, so now when we are reading the zero limits, I mentioned this before, there are three places where you can operate from. One is from memory, what you already know. The other is inspiration, which is where intuition comes from. And the other is zero, you totally disconnect and you just flow. Okay, So all of us are in the middle of between operating in memory and intuition. We are constantly fluctuating between the two. But when you start shifting totally into inspiration, then you don't operate from memory anymore. Okay. So over here, what is he saying? His intuition is leading him towards that area. So he is following his intuition. Again, in the workshops, when you get an answer for yourself, the more you act on the answer, the better your inspirations start to become. Because when you act and you develop a confidence in it, then one thing will automatically lead to the other. You have to unmute.
I looked at them I looked at both of them, at how incredibly serene they appeared. How can you remain so calm? I asked. What if they come crashing in here and arrest all of us? They gazed at me patiently, then Father Sanchez spoke. Don't confuse calmness with carelessness. Our peaceful countenance is a measure of how well we are connected with this energy. We stay connected because it is the best thing for us to do, regardless of the circumstances. You understand that, don't you?
So now this is extremely important. Okay. Now, this is all about resilience. It's about maintaining your equanimity and balance, your centered connection, in spite of what is happening all around you. So maybe there's a war raging around you, but what is happening inside you is what actually ultimately matters. So if you can hold your center, you can hold your equanimity, and then you will be more focused. You'll actually pay more attention to detail, but you'll be not operating out of fear, out of anxiety, out of anger. You will operate out of that stillness, that peace, which is why they are looking. Don't confuse calmness with carelessness. So they are absolutely calm and centered.
Yes, I said, of course. I guess I'm having trouble staying connected myself. Both men smiled. Staying connected, Father Carl said, will be easier once you get clear on who you are.
So now this becomes important also. So again, the inquiry in most spiritual practices is, who am I? So the more close we become, the more authentic we start becoming, the more truthful we start becoming, the more connected we will automatically become. Now, when you look at the four agreements, he said, be impeccable with your word. Okay. Do not make assumptions. Do not take anything personally, and do your best. So the more authentic you become, the more real you become, the more you drop your facade. All of us have a facade. We have a face that we want to show everyone. But the more authentic you become, the more connected you automatically become. So it's a matter of becoming authentic, truthful. If you say a lie, then you have to cover up your lie. If you say the truth and you are what you are, then there is nothing which is hidden. So connecting ourselves with a higher goal, connecting with our true self, to our true purpose, to our true the true reason why we are here is the name of the game.
Father Sanchez stood up and then walked away, announcing that he would be doing the dishes. I looked at Father Carl. Okay, I said, how do I start getting clear about myself? Father Sanchez tells me, he replied, that you already understand the control dramas of your parents. That's right, they were both interrogators that made me aloof. Okay, now you must look past the energy competition that existed in your family and search for the real reason you were there.
Okay, so now what is he saying to look for? That today, why were we born into that family? Why are we born into a particular situation? Our understanding of that why is extremely important. So, what was the reason why we were born into that particular state? And let me tell you, when we are going into these higher states, when we are going into 27, etc., we actually decide what we are wanting to achieve in this life. So we make our plan ourselves, no one makes it for us. Okay, so we have to understand that we need to take responsibility for our situation, because we are ourselves responsible for putting ourselves into that particular situation to learn something. Now, the moment we learn it, we can transcend it.
I looked at him blankly. The process of finding your true spiritual identity involves looking at your whole life as one long story, trying to find a higher meaning. Begin by asking yourself this question: why was I born to this particular family? What might have been the purpose for that? I don't know, I said. Your father was an interrogator. What else was he? You mean, what did he stand for? Yes. I thought for a moment, then said, my father genuinely believes in enjoying life, in living with integrity, but making the most of what life has to offer. You know, living life to the fullest. Has he been able to do this? To some extent, but somehow he always seems to have a run of bad luck just when he thinks he's about to enjoy life the most. Father Carl squinted his eyes in contemplation. He believes life is for fun and enjoyment, but he hasn't quite pulled it off. Yes. Have you thought about why? Not really. I always figured he was unlucky. Maybe he hasn't found the way to do it yet. Maybe not. What about your mother? She's no longer living. Can you see what her life represented? Yes, her life was her church. She stood for Christian principles. In what way? She believed in community service and in following God's laws. Did she follow God's laws? To the letter, at least so far as her church taught. Was she able to convince your father to do the same thing? I laughed. Not really. My mother wanted him to go to church every week and to be involved in community programs. But as I told you, he was more of a free spirit than that. So, where did that leave you? I looked at him. I've never thought about it.
Okay, 1 second. So now what happened? His father and mother were totally two different personalities, and he was stuck in the middle. Now, whether he should go this way or that way. So the child gets very confused if consistency in the way that you are bringing up the child is not there.
Didn't they both want your allegiance? Wasn't that why they were interrogating you? To make sure you weren't siding with the values of the other? Didn't they both want you to think their way was the best? Yes, you're right. How did you respond? I just tried to avoid taking a stand, I guess. They both monitored you to see if you were measuring up to their particular views, and unable to please both, you became aloof. That's about it, I said. What happened to your mother? He asked. She developed Parkinson's disease and died after being sick for a long time. Did she remain true to her faith? Absolutely, I said. Through it, throughout it all. So, what meaning did she leave you with? What? You're looking for the meaning her life has for you, the reason you were born to her, what you were there to learn. Every human being, whether they are conscious of it or not, illustrates with their lives how he or she thinks a human being is supposed to live. You must try to discover what she taught you, and at the same time, what about her life could have been done better. What you would have changed about your mother is part of what you yourself are working on.
So again, because we are born into that family, we are there to learn certain lessons. So we are there to evolve. We are there to create an evolution of what was already there. So it's very clear. What would you like to have changed in the way that your mother would have changed, or what you would like to change in your mother? And that is exactly the thing that you will be working on yourself. Beautiful insight.
Why only part? Because how you would improve on your father's life is the other part. I was still confused. He placed his hand on my shoulder. We are not merely the physical creation of our parents, we are also the spiritual creation. You were born to these two people, and their lives had an irrevocable effect on who you are. To discover your real self, you must adult
Admit.
that the real you began in a position between their truths. You must admit that the real you began in a position between their truths. That's why you were born there, to take a higher perspective on what they stood for. Your path is about discovering a truth that is a higher synthesis of what these two people believed.
So again, we are a sum of our parents. So naturally, we take something from our mother, we take something from our father, and we need to evolve into something better than both of them. Okay, so this is the game that we are playing. This is the actual game.
Bhaiya, I have a question here.
Yes,
So they say that you choose your parents and you
correct,
choose your next janma.
correct.
सो फॉर अ क्रिमिनल सपोज कोई
Hmm,
डाकू है तो वो
hmm.
तो नहीं चूज करेगा कि हम डाकू के घर में पैदा हो या हम एक क्रिमिनल बन के पैदा हो. नो वन वांट्स टू चूज अ अनहैप्पी लाइफ नेक्स्ट. हम इफ आई डाई दिस जन्म आई विल नॉट प्रे टू गॉड कि
What
मेरा
makes you
नेक्स्ट
think
जन्म
that a criminal
अनहैप्पी.
is not happy?
ओके.
What makes you think a criminal? I used to walk, I used to park my car and walk to my office. Okay. There was a family who used to live on that footpath. And for 20 years, of course, now I don't go to my office, I operate from the house. But when I used to walk, I've seen a child being born, and I've seen the child grow to a 20-year-old boy sitting on that footpath, and always saw them happy. Okay.
ओके सो इट्स.
Now, suppose we want to evolve, we want to grow, and we want to transcend. Don't you think you need to have all the kinds of lessons in your life? Otherwise, how are you going to evolve?
Yes, we need to, but suppose this janam if I die, I will definitely not want God to will tell God कि मेरे को next janam गरीब पैदा कर देना फुटपाथ पे या डाकू या I don't know what.
Again, when I look at it from the Gita perspective, it's all about your vasanas. What are your desires?
Yes.
Okay. So, whatever your strongest desire is, that is what is going to result in your next life, because that is the lesson that you want to learn.
Okay.
When we are
Yeah.
going into that transcendental state of, and there's a planning center in F27, people who've
Yes.
experienced will tell you that everything is planned, everything is decided, that okay, like today you want to experience being slapped, and I want to experience, then I'll say I'm your friend over there, I'll say okay, I'll come back with you, and I'll experience slapping and you experience being slapped.
Okay.
You understand?
Yeah.
Now, I have experienced slapping, but I have not experienced being slapped. Now, when will the entire transaction be completed? When will I learn the full lesson? When I've experienced slapping as well as getting slapped. So, I may have to come back later to experience getting slapped. Now, it doesn't mean that you are the one who's going to come and slap me.
Okay.
Someone else may slap me, but my experience to get completed, to become holistic, I need to experience both sides of the coin, right?
Yes.
So you actually want to experience things over and I mean not over and over. Once you learn the lesson from that, you can transit. That is the basic idea. You
Okay.
a clear understanding of this comes when we going into these higher frequency levels. Then you
Hmm.
really start to understand these things. So even if something bad is happening to you, if you can start learning the lesson, that thing that you feel in your small state of consciousness is bad for you, when you change your perspective, you at times you will find it was the best thing that happened to you.
Okay.
Today, when I look back in my life, some of the things that at that time I felt my heart was getting taken out of my body, and I felt so bad about it. In hindsight, when I look back, it was the best possible thing that happened to me.
Okay.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, bhai.
I nodded. So, how would you express what your parents taught you? I'm not sure, I replied. What do you think? My father thought life was about maximizing his aliveness, his enjoyment of who he was, and he tried to pursue that end. My mother believed more in sacrifice and in spending her time in service to others, denying herself. She felt this is what the scriptures command.
Okay, now, so his father wanted to enjoy life. Her mother was totally bent on the scriptures. Now, what is the path that he needs to take? He needs to create a balance between the two and create a middle path so that he learns the lessons from both of them. Okay.
And you, how do you feel about this? I don't know really. Which viewpoint would you choose for yourself, that of your mother or that of your father? Neither. I mean, life is not that simple. He laughed. You're being vague. I guess I don't know. But if you had to choose one or the other, I hesitated, trying to think honestly, then the answers came to me. They're both correct, I said, and incorrect. His eyes beamed. How? I'm not sure exactly, but I think a correct life must include both views. The question for you, Father Carl said, is how? How does one live a life that is both? From your mother, you receive the knowledge that life is about spirituality. From your father, you learn that life is about self enhancement, fun, and adventure. So, my life, I interrupted, is about somehow combining these two approaches? Yes, for you, spirituality is the question. Your whole life will be about finding one that is self enhancing. This is the problem your parents were unable to reconcile, the one they left for you. This is your evolutionary question, your quest this lifetime.
Okay, so now what does this mean? You can have fun being involved in spirituality also. So when you are, so what is the combination of both his father and mother? His father learned to enjoy. His mother wanted spirituality, but she thought it was all about sacrifice. So she was not enjoying. Now, if he, the hero, can bring joy into the process of spirituality, then he has combined both their setups or both their psyches, and he has evolved beyond them. I think we need to stop here. Anyone, anything? This is page 89. Anyone, anything to say?
Great learning, Bhaiya, today.
Yeah, yeah.
Very interesting.
This is the most important. I told you all about the control dramas.
Hmm.
This is, I think, my take from this book. This is the most important thing. Of
Yeah.
course, the other stuff we keep talking about, but these control dramas, I have not seen it being spoken about anywhere else in any other book, etc., that I have read.
Mhm. Mhm.
But it's
How does one
fantastic.
how does one find these things to analyze? Now, this chap was talking to Father Carl, so he could bounce it off him.
Yeah.
How do we do it on our
You
own?
need to bounce it off
You
yourself. Nah?
you have you have Niket Bhaiya.
That's right. And then we can harass him with one more thing.
Yes.
See, I
We
tell
have Father Niket.
Yes. That's a new nickname for you now. This is
Kavita,
for
please,
Father
please,
Nikki, just for the
no.
book reading.
Oh God.
No, Acha, we can have some videos. Acha,
अच्छा
see, the point here
तो
is, the point here is,
सुनो हम जा रहे हैं अभी. I just need to
हाँ,
go.
okay,
हाँ
कविता
चल. Bye bye.
एक
Bye.
मिनट.
हाँ
कविता
बुआ.
तो
हाँ बुआ.
तुम्हारा श्रीनिकेत कहाँ गया?
श्रीनिकेत उधर है. इधर में फादर निकेत है. जब बुक रीडिंग
अच्छा
करेंगे
ठीक
तब
है,
फादर निकेत है.
ठीक है.
बहुत सारे
बाय
निकनेम्स हो सकते हैं ना
बाय.
इधर पूरा.
हाँ.
no, but I'm seriously telling you all, I mean, see, this is very important in the sense that we need to investigate that where our parents are operating from. What is the state of consciousness that our parents were operating from, to understand that. And then we need to create a synthesis that what is it that we need to learn or take from our father, what do we need to take from our mother, and then to integrate them into a whole. Basically, that's the game that we need to play. And also we need to transcend our small, desires and quirks. So becoming aware of our patterns becomes extremely important. If you're constantly repeating the same thing, then you need to pay attention to transcend it. It's as simple as that. The more attention you start paying to the patterns, and that is what we take care of in the excursion also. We keep repeating because you're going into a higher state of consciousness, and those states are very similar to the states that we experience when we are growing up. So it allows us to connect back into those things which actually ingrained, grouted our personalities, and which is not serving us right now. So the more aware you become, the more conscious you become, that is only the thing which will allow you to transcend. Because if you're not conscious of something, how can you deal with it? So again, we come back to the 5 point. The first thing is awareness. You have to become aware. The second is acceptance, whether you accept it or not. Okay. Now, most of the time when people are not on the evolutionary path, if you point something out to them also, they'll get angry. They get defensive. Okay, they will start giving justification. Now that's a problem which is there. So we need to look into ourselves as to where we are getting stuck, what is repeating in our lives. I think that is the best way to do this. And let me tell you, most of the time what is repeating in your life has been repeating since your younger days.
True.
So the point is that when you start coming to the original point, and this is what we find in biofield tuning also, when we are scanning the field, anything that has happened in your younger age will affect your future age. I mean, through your life, and this thing keeps repeating. So the idea is to clear it from the field. So there's so many ways of doing it, right? It's biofield tuning is not the only way. I call hemisync process jhadu marna, that your field starts to get cleared up from under say it just starts getting cleared up. So all the processes we are doing is ultimately, where is it leading to equanimity, to centeredness. Whether you take somatic intelligence also, that Zia is conducting that program, the essence of that program was to be centered, basically to create the centering within you. You understand? So that was the game in that program. When you see heart math, what is it? Creating resilience within you, creating that peak where you are in the center of your sympathetic and your parasympathetic nervous system. So depending on where you need to be, in action or in rest, you can go into either direction. When you look at the Monroe Institute, it is creating a harmony between the two sides of your brain, so that again you come into equanimity. If you look at any kind of meditation, it is taking you to that centeredness. Basically, that's the game. And today, when you balance the basic characters of yourself and bring it into the center, that is when you'll get centered. Now, where are you coming from? From your parents. So you've taken something from your father, you've taken something from your mother, and you need to integrate them in such a way which creates the result so that you transcend both of them. Okay, that's the game that we are playing over here. It's all about awareness. Most people do not pay attention to this. If you see the life of a person, what is it? They'll get up at a particular time, they'll do this at a particular time, they'll keep repeating the same cycle in their life. In the workshops, we ask this question: when was the last time you did something new? Let me tell you, 9 out of 10 times I see blank faces. I'm asking you this question. Forget awareness. Okay, we are doing something new all the time. But when was the last time you did something new? Drop awareness out of it. Think about it.
In the lockdown, I'm doing a lot.
What?
Yesterday.
No,
In the
I'm saying
lockdown-
drop awareness, okay? Because
No, not
naturally you're doing
awareness.
something new. But I'm
Yeah.
saying drop awareness before that.
Yeah.
Before you started joining awareness sessions, when was the last time you did something new?
Not much.
Think about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Yesterday.
You get that? That is the
Yeah.
basic thing.
Okay.
So I
Thank-
became a quiz master for a quiz 2 weeks ago. That was the first time I did that.
Great.
I had to practice doing that.
Yeah, of course. So you learn a new skill, right? That's the
Yeah.
most important.
I do something new almost every day.
Acha, what?
Searching technical literatures and trying to find out new things.
Good. That's why you're a young man.
Oh yeah, I am young man of 70.
Chaliye. Okay, so see you all for meditation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ram Ram.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Ram
you,
Ram Bhaiya.
Bhaiya.
Ram Ram.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Thank you so much.
Bye.